Hi, I'm Ian Corzine, your social media lawyer. Did you watch the debate on Tuesday? Did you see the presidential candidates fight it out on national TV with millions watching? I did, and I don't think they performed that well. One of the main reasons is the issues, but another of the main reasons is the way their style in the debate. Us lawyers are trained to be superior communicators. We work so hard to be able to be persuasive, effective, and accurate. And there are some of the things that I noticed during this presidential debate, which, maybe aren't political. They're on the substance. You could be a Joe Biden supporter. You can be a Donald Trump supporter. But the bottom line is there's some mistakes that either of the candidates made. And so today, what I wanted to do is spend some time analyzing, breaking down some of these clips and highlighting for you some of the mistakes that the presidential candidates made in communicating their positions that I'm hoping that you can use in your own broadcast. When you're doing a live, when you're doing your own produced video, these are some things that will break the attention of the audience, make the audience question your sincerity. So again, I just want to say my name is Ian Corzine, your social media lawyer. I spend my days combing through stories on social media. I love social media. I love to assist content creators understand the law. And most importantly, I want to protect their rights to free speech, freedom of expression online. Today's live is going to go a little bit different. I'm going to have my questions and answers at the end of the broadcast because I really want to get to the substance. I only have 30 minutes. And as you know, I never like to waste your time. So let's get right to it. Let me switch the screens here and we will start right now. Here is Joe Biden talking, I would say about 10 to 15 minutes into the debate.
You're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you, that is totally legitimate.
All right.
All right. So I want to, before Donald Trump interrupts Joe Biden in this particular exchange, and which he does a lot, which I will comment on a little bit later, it's really important to see what Joe Biden has done here. So there's a moderator, of course, and Joe Biden looks the moderator probably excessively, but in this one exchange, he doesn't. I think that's effective. Us lawyers, when we're before a jury, we're taught to ask questions of the witness by looking at the jury, almost using questions as argument. That's a good way to make eye contact and to engage the viewer. So in this particular case, he's making eye contact with the audience and not the moderator and not Donald Trump. Another effective tool, don't make eye contact with your debate partner. You're honoring his statements. You're actually putting validity to his statements. So Joe Biden rarely looks over to President Trump, which is effective. The one thing I will say about this one particular exchange, though, is that it appears that Joe Biden is not practiced on this issue. I never want people to script their answers to debate questions, to videos, to anything. I think off the cuff, from your memory is the best way to communicate to people. That's how you connect. However, you got to practice. And I know these candidates have a lot to memorize. They have a lot of events, but you've got to understand when you have fundamental issues on the table that you memorize those positions so that you don't appear like you're searching for words. And I got to tell you, in this particular exchange, Joe Biden looks like he's searching for words. Let's continue on.
No.
When you have 80 million ballots,
I have a final
Senate
question.
and swamping the system, you know it can't be done. You know it can't, and already there's been
so now,
fraud.
Mail service delivers
wait a minute, gentlemen. In the
185
final
million
question
pieces of mail a
is,
day.
in 8
ballots.
states.
The point is that the president also.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next clip. But before we go there, we see Donald Trump interrupting Joe Biden. I am not sure who advised him to do all these interruptions, but I got to tell you that it is very disengaging for the audience. It is one thing on a strong point to interrupt your counterpart, to explain yourself and to explain your position if it's that important, but a constant interruption during an exchange, during a presentation is absolutely not wanted, and your credibility goes straight down. The problem with people who interrupt is they tend to believe that what they're saying doesn't have value. or their position that's been made before the debate doesn't have value. That's why they're just trying to get it across. But for a lot of people, it doesn't come off well. And as a result, you look like you don't know what you're doing. And so in this particular exchange, Donald Trump, I think the strategy is he's going to bully him. He's going to beat him down, or maybe or get him off his game so that he is not effective at communicating. But I got to tell you, in a certain situation like this, in a debate, there are so many protections for a debater in this series that it's very hard to be strong against someone and not come off like a bully. And I have to tell you, this is obviously consistent with President Trump's personality since he's been in the public eye, but he needs to choose his moments. If there's another debate, and I'm thinking there's not going to be, but if there is, he has got to choose his moments to interrupt sparingly. All right, let's move on to the next clip.
As opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is already
You don't know it's
begun.
on the ballot.
Okay. So here's another exchange. Okay. So what is Joe Biden looking at? He is looking at the commentator and the moderator. That is not the place to look in this particular series. Your place to look is at the camera, at you and me watching him. When he's disengaged, when he's speaking to the moderator, he is not communicating to us. Our minds turn off and we don't listen. So if you're in a situation where you're interviewing someone on camera, it is best to look at them politely and ask the question or speak to them, then turn back to the camera and engage in a discussion. It has to be artful. You don't want to be artificial where you never look at the person you're interviewing or the person you're debating. But at the same time, if you don't maintain eye contact with the camera, you're going to have problems. You're going to disengage your audience. Let's move on.
Why is it on the ballot?
Because
Why is it on the ballot? It's not on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the court.
I don't think so.
In the court. Well,
there's nothing happening there.
Donald, would you
and
just
you don't
be quiet
know
for a
her view on Roe v. Wade. You
I
don't know her view.
Well, all right. Let's talk. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote.
Whatever position I take on that issue, that is the issue. Okay. You know, one of the problems that we have these days is when we put our content out, we want to make sure we give content. And we think sometimes we need to over-explain things and use more and more words. Or we just need to stall for time while we're thinking. I think that the American people and the people that are watching these debates are smarter than that. And they know that if you just have nonsense, that you lose credibility. It's not effective. I swear to God, if you would just pause as opposed to stumble with your words, it is so much more effective than just saying, the issue is the issue, and just kind of, hedging your bets on your discussion. And then the worst mistake, which we're going to start seeing right now, is when a presidential candidate starts speaking nonsense, but doing it in a commanding way. At this point, we're just like, I don't even understand where you're coming from. So at its fundamentals, don't try to pack in more words in your discussions. If you need time to think, everyone does, pause and think about what you're going to say and be economical with your verbiage. All right, we'll continue on.
You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
Are you gonna pack the
Make
court?
sure you, in fact, let people know
He doesn't want
you're a
to answer the
senator.
question.
I'm not going to answer the question
Why
because
would you answer that
because
question?
the question
you want to
is
put a lot of
the
new
question
Supreme Court
is
justice,
the
radical
question,
left.
Would you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your?
Okay. All right. So there's so much to unpack right here. You never want to be in a position in debate where you're not going to answer that question. There's certainly ways around things. If you do not want to make a position public, you don't have to go there. But you don't say, I'm not going to answer that question. There's lots of ways to hedge around it. There's ways to talk around it. And the most effective way is to answer the question. Because these questions are reasonable positions. They can be debated. It is okay to decide that you want to, recommend that a filibuster no longer be a procedure in Congress. It is okay. I think sometimes these candidates are so afraid of alienating a base that they don't want to answer the question, but it just doesn't come off well. Now, this is another example where you can see in the screen right here, the presidential candidate Joe Biden is just frustrated. Will you shut up? You know, there's a couple things that I think are going on in the public sphere before this debate. Vice President Biden has this whole thing where shut up, man, that kind of attitude, this kind of grumpy old man thing. And I think he was almost bringing this out at this point in time. But more importantly, I think he was just frustrated. And the minute you show frustration in debate, it's a real weakness. So I would really counsel the advisors of Joe Biden in the future to not get into a situation where you say, will you just shut up, man? Let Donald Trump's excessive interruptions, bullying, let that communicate the point. If you're unable to speak because someone is not following the rules, is being a bully, that is sending a message to the public. I don't trust that guy. I don't want that guy. So, it's one thing. You don't want to get in a situation where you capitulate to being bullied. You want to be in a situation where you look respectful, where you're appearing and you're speaking in accurate terms, you're pausing, and at the same time, you're not going to be bullied by someone who's not following the rules. So those are a couple points there.
Yes, Joe.
Who's
on your list?
Right, gentlemen, I think
this
we've
is
ended
so
this.
He's going to pack the court.
We have
not going to give a list.
We have ended this segment.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you didn't do
done.
very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
14,000 people.
All right, so this is a point that I want to bring up now. I think at this stage, we have a moderator problem, and that is that he is allowing various of the presidential candidates to interrupt, and I think that he has to be stronger. No question that deference has to be given to not both seasoned politicians, but especially the president. But at the same time, they agreed to the rules, and it is not fair when someone breaks those rules repeatedly. Not at important points every time, but repeatedly. So I do think this is a moderator problem, and it should have been stopped right away. And I think if a stronger moderator had been there, it would have been stopped.
Not 200,000. There was no economic recession.
Sir, you made a
There was no recession.
You made a point. Let him answer it.
And there was we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he's shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home.
Okay. All right. Here's another thing. The reason it's shut down, look, okay, that's a non sequitur. You got to do your best to know your positions well enough beforehand that you don't have to go to a situation and lead the public into a direction the way you're answering a question and then just stop. Absolutely stop and say, look, and go in a different direction. It doesn't come off well. And at this point in time, you got to wonder how prepared Joe Biden was. Certainly got to wonder how prepared Donald Trump was too. But you got to wonder. You don't want to do that. You want to be able to subtly answer your points or answer the line of questioning and then move on to the next point. You don't want to completely stop with one point and then move on to the other.
How many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even...
All right. Another lawyer point. How many of you woke up and someone had passed away because of COVID? You don't know the answer to that question. You don't know what the American public and the people that are watching how they'll answer that question. As a lawyer, fundamentally, you never ask a question you don't know the answer to or have a very good understanding of where the answer could go. In this particular argument that Joe Biden is doing, it is not effective because he does not know what the answer is in our minds. Some of us would answer the question, I don't know anybody who's passed away because of COVID. Some of us may answer the question, I know 5 people or 10 people. But your answer to the answer to your inquiry has to be consistent to be effective. If it how many of you guys love the color red? What is your favorite color? If you ask open-ended questions like this, then you don't know the answer, then your argument is not effective. Your argument when you're answering or asking these questions has to be a simple answer that the public can identify with and get behind. Otherwise, it's ineffective. So I really don't like this argument at this point in time. There's plenty of other ways to argue how important or how severe COVID is. You don't need to answer this question when you don't know how the American mind is going to answer it in each individual case.
Speak to them. You had a nurse holding a phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far
How
more
many
people.
people?
Far more people. They're going to be
This
delivering
is the
the
same
vaccine.
man
It's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
by Easter this would be gone away. By the warm weather, it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would.
All right, so we're going to get to the bleach thing. And I think that there's some fun to be had with some of the statements President Trump makes on a day-to-day basis. This is an interesting period. I don't like this exchange either, because you have to be able to differentiate what you would have done from what he would have done. And I have to say, given the facts that were before us way back when, I don't know that President Biden, if he was president instead of Trump, would have done anything differently. It's not clear that that's the case. There's never been any evidence. There's never been any discussion that he would have handled it differently. He would have not shut down the country. He would have opened the country. He would have not shut down airplane flights, or he would have shut down the country earlier. We don't know anything. All we hear is criticism of the way President Trump handled, back in March of 2020. Again, not taking a position one way or the other. I'm not a fan of either. But I got to tell you, if I'm doing an independent analysis as a lawyer, I say that is a wrong argument, because there's no basis for you saying you would have handled it differently, and you're criticizing someone who is in a difficult position. So it doesn't really work.
Take care of it. This is the same
That was
man.
said sarcastically,
That was
and you know that. That was said sarcastically.
And so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up
You'll have
on
the
that.
vaccine
I
sooner
want to
than
pick
that.
up on the.
Did you use the
Okay. So the point is that it's a non sequitur argument to go on to saying, the COVID is on you, but we should have had his vaccine. We don't have a vaccine. And then we have President Trump saying we're going to have a vaccine soon. What is your position? Please be clear in your words when you're debating people, because at this point in time, I don't know what to believe. He criticizes President Trump for handling the crisis. He doesn't say what he would have done differently. He doesn't have any evidence to back that up. It's unclear about his position on vaccines. Does he advocate that we need more testing, so we should wait to have vaccines later on in time? Or does he, as President Trump apparently advocates, say that we should have vaccines sooner than later? When you're criticizing someone for taking action, you have to set forth your position, how you would do it, and why it would be a different result. Joe Biden has done nothing about that. He's just complained about how President Trump handled the situation. The cheap shot about the bleach in the arm. Listen, I think maybe if there's a jovial moment, if there's a lightness to the debate, a cheap shot here and there actually can work. In this particular case, it appears scripted. And so most people, even if you're a big supporter of Joe Biden, probably cringe, so that's what I'm thinking.
word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me.
Okay. Again, I really don't like this argument. He's capitalizing on some errors that Joe Biden may have made when he was speaking extemporaneously. It's not effective. I guess President Trump is trying to imply that Joe Biden is not smart because of where he finished in his class. That really has no bearing on how smart a person is. There's so many other circumstances to consider when determining where you fall in a class. I mean, was Joe Biden working 2 jobs and going to school? Was there a particular teacher that had it out for him? Did he not work hard? I tend to believe he didn't. I tend to believe that he did work hard. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in this position. So I don't think it makes sense oftentimes in a debate to capitalize on personal attacks and use circumstances that are out of context to make someone feel bad. It doesn't. It just appears like a bully. It's not effective. It really is better if you rise up and hit hard on the issues that count. And President Trump did not do that here.
Don't ever use that word.
Oh, well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to Nancy Pelosi and Schumer.
By the way,
Chuck.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with him in the
Okay.
Senate.
Let-
And he sits in his golf course. And, well, I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably play
think
more than
about
I
it.
do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact?
Well, he wants to shut down this country, and I want to keep it open. And we
You
did
ju-
a
he
great
just
thing by
admitted
shutting
he
it
shut
down.
it down.
Wait a minute,
Let
Joe.
him
Let me
finish,
shut
sir.
you down for a second.
Let me shut you down for a second. I thought that was a funny thing. So President Trump says Joe Biden wants to shut down the country, and Joe Biden responds with, "You shut down the country." Okay, I don't know how that flows. On one hand, President Trump is saying you want to continue to have the country shut down, and then Biden respond. The natural response is from the opponent, "No, I don't want to continue the shutdown," or "Yes, I do for these reasons." What Joe Biden has done is said, "No, you did," and it doesn't even make sense in response. You got to be listening. One of the things, I know it's a hard job as a debater or a lawyer, especially a litigation lawyer, like I was doing for 20 years, is you got to know your positions well, but you got to listen. What they teach you in law school, especially when you're doing depositions or questioning when you have a witness on the stand in trial, is put those notes away for a moment and really focus on the witness, really focus on the opponent. Listen to what he or she says. That is where the gold is. Your questions that you came up with, 2 weeks ago when you were preparing for your direct examination or trial, you need to have an outline, but they're really not relevant. It's really about where that person is. Look into that person's eyes. Are they prepared? Are they evasive? Use that to your advantage because that is super persuasive. One of the things that I learned as a trial lawyer is that you literally only need that moment for an entire trial. And I don't care if it's a small trial, like I was doing DUIs on government property when I was with the U.S. Attorney's Office. I don't care if it's a large case. I was handling multi-million-dollar civil actions. If you have that moment, the jury or the judge, depending upon if it's a bench trial or not, can go, "Oh my gosh, this person's lying. This person deserves to win." And the same is true in this debate. If you get to a situation where you can listen and really hit hard back on a substantive point, not a cheap shot, you won the debate. Even 1 point, it really, really can do that. So you need, when you're doing your videos out there with an interviewer, or maybe you're doing a debate, maybe online, listen to what the other person is saying. Pause. Be effective, be accurate. I swear to God, it'll pay you back.
Joe, just for 1 second.
Are you questioning
No, I think
the
masks
efficacy
are
of
okay. You have to
masks?
understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to, but I
Just
wear
like your
masks
rallies.
when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say,
Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. They were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing.
I don't know where he's going on this. President Trump has not only passed an executive order that continues unemployment coverage, but additionally, the entire Congress has passed a bill that has assisted small businesses nationwide. I don't have any position. I'm not trying to argue for Trump at all, but it's not a very strong position. The response is, "Yeah, I have," or "I've worked hard." And so what is the position? He says it costs a lot of money to open safely. So what does that imply? It means that continue on in the shutdown. Well, that is more money. Where is that money going to come from? A good way to argue that point was to be able to explain how you're going to pay for a slower opening and a more safe opening. But to criticize someone who's just trying to balance the need for safety with the monetary concerns, it's a difficult position, and there's no end to it. So I don't think it's effective here.
6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right, your time is up, sir. We are going to get to.
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
Whoa. So a moderator issue. If you're doing a moderation, that's it. You don't leave it open. This guy right here, I think it's Chris, right? Let's say, play it again.
1 and 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right, your time is up, sir. We are going to get to.
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Boom. You both had 2 minutes, sir. That's time. We're moving on. A good way to do it is not to look in the direction of the person that's challenging you and look to the next question. So if it's to Joe Biden, look to him and ask that question. You're strong. I know it's the president. I know it's important, but you have to be strong. You have to have your boundaries, especially in this situation. I think a lot of moderators makes that mistake. I think they're afraid of alienating. They're afraid of making someone not like them. And the bottom line is, if you're chosen to moderate, you have to be like an umpire in baseball. You have to be declarative and final when you're making your decisions.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town, and I'm not sure it can ever recover. And let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already.
All right, terminate my taxes. President Trump here, I think, is arguing that the lowering of the taxes in the country was beneficial to businesses. But he's not using the correct terms, and it's hard to follow. Again, this is another counsel. I think you need to know your positions better. You need to have, if it's 25 main issues you're prepared on, you need to be able to recount those issues in as few words as possible, in as many meaningful words as possible.
Here, they'll leave
Hardly
for other
any companies
places. They will
poured in
leave,
here.
and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look,
Mr.
we
Vice President.
inherited the worst recession short of a depression.
You'll have the worst depression or recession that you've ever, concerned about, you've ever heard about. I think there's an answer to that. I think the answer is, in Joe Biden's case, no, we won't, because of these reasons. I think sometimes you got to listen to the other opponent and answer the question asked. That is real strong, persuasive argument. When you actually listen to the other person and you say, no, we won't for these reasons. Let those reasons be judged. Those reasons could be wrong. Those reasons could be disagreed with. But it really buys credibility when you answer the question, not only of the moderator or of the opponent.
In American history, I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. Violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right.
What is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place,
that
and you
is
say
not
peaceful protest?
Okay, what are they arguing about here? President Trump is attempting to argue that Joe Biden has a different definition of peaceful protest. I think he was very clear in his discussion. He says, there is never a time for violence in a protest. So why are you going to argue with it? Why are you going to put on that? No, you believe in a violent protest. It doesn't make sense. I think sometimes you get a lot of credibility when there are certain arguments that you both can agree on. When I was a practicing lawyer, there are times when you're making an argument on a motion for summary judgment or maybe a motion to dismiss, and there's certain things that are undisputed. You get so much credibility with the judge when you say, I don't have an argument with that. He's right on that. Let's move on to this. And I got to tell you, in this particular case, it's argument for argument's sake. And even though oftentimes our public is, mesmerized by arguments on TV, they are very smart. You guys are very smart. The people who are watching this debate are very smart. They see through this. Argument for argument's sake never works. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of viewers' time. And it's a reason why people turn this off, because they don't want to hear lack of substance. They want to hear these people who are in charge of vast resources and in some part us have substantive reasons for why they are taking their positions. And doing things like this, President Trump fails. It doesn't work out.
Not asking,
but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the issue of race.
please.
I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment.
This
is that
ridiculous.
the Democrats that run these
Absolutely
cities
ridiculous.
don't want to talk like you about law and order.
Violent
and you
crime,
still haven't mentioned.
violent
Are you in
crime.
favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You
Are
following
you
it
in
and a little
favor
bit
of
of
law and order?
Are you in favor of law and order? I'm in favor of law. I don't know. In this particular case, it looks like the Vice President Biden is hiding something. I'm afraid. Why not say, yeah, I'm in favor of law and order? Who's not in favor of law and order? It makes you look much more approachable and human if you just answer what's being asked.
You asked a question, let him finish.
Law and order.
Law and order.
Let him answer.
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused the recession.
Okay. One of the things I want to make sure that you guys all think about is that it is one thing to take responsibility for something positive in your life. So, if you, let's say you work at a computer company and you contributed to a very successful software app or something, it is one thing to say, we did this together. All right, that's buyable. But when you start using when you start implying that I did this, especially when you're just part of a team, people see right through it, especially when the label that's on Joe Biden is vice president. Everyone knows that the vice president is there in case the president passes away. That's the main reason he's there. Now, there's certainly presidents that use vice presidents in different ways, and a lot of times vice presidents can be very effective, and especially in the last 20 to 30 years, we've had very effective vice presidents. But Joe Biden is not responsible for a positive, successful economy. If anybody, it's President Obama and the House and Senate. So in this particular case, I think that Joe Biden claiming responsibility for a successful economy means that it's not an effective argument and people aren't really buying it. So that's one thing to remember on that.
With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head to head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got
And-
$3.5 million.
That's right.
Mi-
And
Mr.
by the way,
President,
my son.
Wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it.
Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion and say, here's $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that
All right, so we sound in that exchange. I'm trying to fast forward because we're getting close over our 30-minute limit. But the bottom line is you've got to know your positions. This is another example of Vice President Joe Biden not knowing his positions and stumbling for words, and you start to lose people when you do that. The moderator at this particular case, right before that, he seemed to get strong. This is at the end of the debate. That's not the effective time for you to take strong. The effective time for you to be strong is at the beginning to establish a precedent for your rules. If you don't allow the debaters to get away with rule violations in the beginning, that will be a long-term compliance. The debaters will then follow those rules. But in this particular case, the moderator really allowed rule violations in the beginning. And so as a result of that, there were repeated rule violations. All right, let's finish this up.
President Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line.
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is a guy who says that, well, the fact that.
Okay, so we're gonna complete our review of the debate footage there. I think it's long enough for everybody to go through over 30 minutes of it. Again, it shows lack of preparation. We're hoping that if there is another debate, that we'll have better performed debaters. We will have a stronger moderator, someone who can really establish the ground rules as he begins, so that we have a more cordial and a more substantive and accurate debate. So this is an example. One of the things that's in the thumbnails, who did worse? That really was the question in my head at the end of the presidential debate for 2020. Who did worse? I don't know. That's a question for you to answer of your own conscience. But I really wanted to bring out some of the key points that I saw when I was watching the debate, and they had less to do with the substance and more about delivery. Who is the more effective communicator? Oftentimes, the more effective communicator is the president of the United States. We'll have to see if this debate has any effect on the votes out there for each of the presidential candidates. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. I don't have time to go through the comments. I want to say I appreciate all those comments. I appreciate you being here, going through this with me. This is a very important subject matter for America, and I'm glad you're taking it seriously like I am. And I'm Ian Corzine, your social media lawyer. If you have any questions out there about social media, about some of these issues, how to deliver effectively when you're arguing with people or when you're putting on a presentation, you can always go to iancorzine.com, schedule a consult with me directly, and I'll be able to help you out. Until then,